very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Lord with the CBC Evening News. And our top story tonight, while government is seeking to cut expenditure to meet its fiscal deficit target, no additional large-scale layoffs are predicted. This from Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs Christopher Sinclair during a media conference today. He, however, says there will be some attrition when some statutory entities are amalgamated.
There is a process of reforming statutory entities. For example, we've moved ahead already with the proposed merger of Sports Council and Gymnasium. We expect to add COMI to that once the Cabinet approves that particular part. We have also signed off, and it has to go to Cabinet, but we've also signed off for a merger between the Barbados National Oil Company and the National Petroleum Corporation as well. We're looking at other agencies, but those have to be approved by the Cabinet, and I believe that will be done shortly. And in that exercise, it is normal to expect that there will be some attrition.
Mr. Sinclair further explained how the process will work.
If you have two entities that have, I shouldn't call them positions, but have two of similar positions, and you merge them and you do not need both, then of course one may go. So you will find that there may be some smaller attrition in terms of retrenchments because of the exercise, but not the 3,000 or the 1,500, not that type.
Well, the finance minister also says government will achieve a 6.5% deficit with a combination of cost-cutting measures. Mr. Sinclair has made it clear that government will also not be going the route of an IMF program and that all ministries will be tightening their belts. Ryan Broom reports.
Minister Sinclair says while some quarters have suggested that Barbados should go with an IMF program, government does not see that as the best option at this time.
We have said what our position is. We are not contemplating any IMF program at this stage. We do not think it is necessary. We believe that Barbadians can achieve the objectives of the program that we have set ourselves. It is not going to be easy or painless, but I know that the alternatives, which some people are clamoring for, will be far worse than they may suspect. So we've measured the situation, and we feel at this stage.
The minister also answered the question whether Barbadians will see additional taxes in the upcoming budget, which he says is in a few weeks.
It is not our contemplation for any major increases in taxes, impositions. In fact, we may very well be looking over the short to medium term if we can broaden the basis to reduce some of the incidence of tax on Barbadians. That's really where our goal is, but of course, as you know, we have a fiscal program in place. We want to achieve certain targets, and therefore we have to stick to what we have for the time being.
Meanwhile, the minister has also responded to concerns from the private sector that economic growth has been sluggish and that government's efforts to reduce expenditure have fallen short of its target.
It's not so much what government should or should not be doing. We encourage them to say that. But we also want to hear from the private sector what are they proposing to do to get our economy going. If this is going to be a private sector-led economy, and I did hear the president of the Private Sector Association say he's not sure what words to the effect that he wasn't sure what it is that the government or the central bank expected from them in terms of private sector. We expect investments. We expect them, people who are sitting on the fence, and it's not all of them, because there are some very aggressive people in the private sector who have not stopped investing.
Ryan Broom, CBC News.
Thank you, Ryan. And we're joined now by President of the Barbados Economic Society, Jeremy Stephen, for his take on the announcement made by the Finance Minister. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Lisa. Happy Common Week.
As we heard in Ryan's report, the minister made it clear that we would not be going under an IMF program. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's at government's will whether we would go to an IMF program or not. But I must say that the dire need for financing is still there, especially seeing that interest costs as a percentage of GDP have continued to climb, and they've climbed quite a bit this last quarter and half year. And the IMF is supposed to be, as a, let's say, as a measure, seen as a short-term source of financing in particular. And most people out there recognize the need for not just the source of financing, but also the discipline that comes along with it. And confidence is so short in the economy right now, particularly in the same beleaguered private sector, that people imagine that the that the IMF is the only means through which government would be able to attain the targets truthfully that they've set, and especially reiterated by the minister today, and also be a good source of cheap financing, because interest costs continue to rise and will continue to stifle the government's ability to reinvest in the growth we need going forward, particularly in the case where they have recognized that a growing economy is needed to drive growth back. The growth in tax revenues in particular is not going to be sustainable. They've made a temporary increase in personal and corporate income taxes, but mainly due, in my belief, to the removal of certain allowances, and that having filtered into the system right now. We could expect, with a continuation of fiscal consolidation, that those increases would be just temporary, really.
Now, you mentioned taxes. He did say that the budget would be in a few weeks' time.
Yep.
And he also promised that there would be no taxes.
You see, I try to tell people that defining taxation is a very difficult thing in the grand scheme of things. Meaning, you can say, well, we're not going to introduce any new taxes. There won't be a consolidation tax part 2. There won't be the dreaded municipal tax part 2, or there might not be increases in those rates. But when you do say that you're widening the tax base, it means you're beginning to capture more people who would have been, let's say, initially left out of the loop, either because they were too poor or either because they didn't have the proper means through which government could collect from them. So either property owners, under the land tax, for instance, property taxes would just go into, charge property holders, if you see where I'm coming from. So the widening of the base would mean lowering certain benchmarks. You would either go ahead and say, well, certain allowances might have to be removed. And the minister sensed as far back as August, this is actually surprising me, but as far back as August, the minister had made light about the same findings by CARTAC, which said that we had too many concessions that were, let's say, ill applied, and that we needed a whole rationalization of our tax system. So to actually see this surfacing again, and the report that came before this conference surfacing again, it means that the government is going to seriously look at widening the loop. That is, pulling in people who previously might not have been able, or might not have been attractive to them in. I'm not sure about VAT, however, because what's being said is that the VAT threshold should be risen to about 160,000 thereabouts. Who knows?
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Stephen. And that's Jeremy Stephen, president of the Barbados Economic Society. Well, it appears that the north of the island was hardest hit by heavy downpours which drenched the island today. The adverse weather conditions also forced education officials to call off all schools for the day. Shane Seeley has the story.
It was a tough day for motorists, especially in the north of the island, as many of them were forced to evade floodwaters resulting from hours of heavy rain. This was the scene on Highway 2A. Meanwhile, in more rural areas, the floodwaters created rivers, sometimes bringing debris which rendered bridges impassable. A team from the Ministry of Transport and Works was called out to clear several areas.
We had Thompson Bridge, we had Lakes Bridge, we also had the surrounding district. And I would tell you, I haven't seen water like this since 1970.
This Belle Plaine St. Andrew resident showed us footage of flooding recorded on his phone before the waters receded.
I haven't seen it so since the early 80s. I said it was at school. Last time we had this amount of rain in Belle Plaine.
Schools were ghost towns today. The Ministry of Education made an early call to close all nursery, primary and secondary schools, along with the Barbados Community College and the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic. A vendor at the Aline School says it was a good decision.
The children's safety come first, so I don't really mind. I had some things to do, and I did it. I went in town, and town was very good. When I came back, I saw that the bridge and everything was overflowing in lakes, and even the bridge on the East Coast. So I think it was a good idea for the schools to be closed.
Now, in spite of the flooding, the Department of Emergency Management says it wasn't called to respond to any incidents. Meanwhile, the Met Office, although not issuing a flood warning or watch, is telling residents to expect much of the same for the remainder of the day and into tomorrow. Shane Seeley, CBC News.
Thank you, Shane, and we'll have more news ahead, but first we want to get your take on this question. Do you think more statutory corporations should be amalgamated? Text yes or no to short code 8111, the result at the end of our news.
Right from its start over 80 years ago, Goddard Enterprises made innovation and diversification its own proud tradition. Today's Goddard Enterprises Limited is one of the Caribbean's foremost and diversified multinational corporations, comprising more than 50 companies in over 20 countries. Goddard Enterprises Limited is catering, manufacturing, hospitality and service business, financial, and marketing and distribution of world-famous brands. Goddard Enterprises, the tradition of innovation and service since 1921.
I sent a text to the economic program, and then I got a call saying that I was a winner. This system is beautiful. For baths, it is excellent. I want to thank SunPower for this wonderful gift and giving back to the community. And I want to say again, thanks very much to Economics and SunPower, and I encourage everyone to watch the show. You too can be a winner.
The Ebola virus disease is a rare and often deadly disease. You can only get Ebola from touching the bodily fluids of a person who is sick with or has died from Ebola, or from contact with infected animals or contaminated objects like needles. Ebola. Know the facts.
Patient safety must never be compromised. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital is standing by this statement as the institution for the first time observed Infection Control Week. The week is used to promote and raise awareness of the role of infectious control practitioners. Staff of the unit came in for praise for their work, with some being awarded. CEO Dr. Dexter James told them that they are essential to the QEH.
You've managed to ensure the preservation of a relatively safe environment for staff, patients, and visitors. You are one of the many unsung heroes who work tirelessly behind the scenes in the promotion and promulgation of patient safety. For all of the above reasons and more, we are indeed indebted to all those who have led and continue to sustain the implementation of this relatively unknown infectious disease management and practice over the past 49 years.
An infectious disease specialist and consultant at the QEH, Dr. Corey Ford, is reminding people that there are simple things which can be done to control the spread of infections in the healthcare environment.
I encourage everyone to take the time to learn about the ways we can help prevent the spread of health care-associated infections and communicable diseases. This includes hand washing on a regular basis when you come and leave the hospital, using a tissue or arm to cover the cough or sneezes. These are some of the ways we can use to help contain diseases, example, influenza.
Foreign Affairs Minister Senator Maxine McLean says she has not received any official correspondence from Trinidad and Tobago regarding the number of Barbadians there illegally. Reports surfaced almost 2 weeks ago indicating that almost 7,000 Barbadians are now in the Twin Island Republic illegally. But Senator McLean says she would have to investigate as several questions must be answered. She was speaking during the People's Business on CBC TV8 last night.
It certainly would be a request of mine to get some information on that, but I don't know that there's anything we have to respond to. If there are illegal persons in Barbadians living in Trinidad and Tobago, then the Trinidad and Tobago government has a right to address it. Now, there are a couple of questions that you may want to ask, and I certainly would assume that when information or if information is provided, that it would be provided. when have these people been there? Are these people who have been there from 1925 and live, you know, are there people who have recently gone there and so on? No, in all seriousness, we would need to get some profiles of those persons.
Well, on another note, Senator McLean says the island's citizenship is not for sale, but made it clear that they will continue to facilitate high net worth individuals.
There are several persons who either do business in Barbados, own property, have significant investments in Barbados. And under the normal scheme of things, as they enter Barbados, they have to be back and forth. As is right now, they probably would get 3 months at a time. What it used to be, rather, because I think this should be in place. And so to facilitate such persons, we have put in place an arrangement where, having met certain criteria in terms of worth and investment or property, etc., they can get permission to stay in Barbados up to about 5 years.
There's an appeal to government and police to do more to stamp out radio larceny. It's coming from Chief Executive Officer of the Barbados Agricultural Society, James Paul, over the weekend at the BAS Annual General Meeting. He wants the issues of legislation and enforcement to be taken more seriously to protect the investments of farmers.
The BAS feels that the legislative changes and enforcement initiatives being asked for is needed not later, but now. The current situation is simply untenable. Strong enforcement measures and suitable penalties are required to deal with those persons engaged in such acts. We should not be placed on the back burner of the legislative agenda of government.
A new channel with at least 50% local content is coming to MCTV. It's Trident 10, which will be broadcast on channel 116 from this Saturday, November 1st. Executive Director Paul Clark says Trident 10 will give local producers the opportunity to expose their talent and points out that it's not just a channel.
It is also a full distribution platform, because this will now be a way where producers can get their works outside to the rest of the world. We've had interest from Canada, the US, even as far as Africa, in terms of Barbadian shows.
And Chief MCTV Officer Andrew Green says they are pleased to partner with Trident 10.
Every year we spend millions of dollars acquiring content for the benefit of the Barbadian public. And essentially, I want to see that turn to become a situation where we as Barbadians can earn a living, earning millions of dollars also from the content that we provide. Therefore, Trident 10 provides a platform within which we can do that, we can accomplish that.
The Royal Barbados